Demon-Kissed, Part 2, Alistair, Chapter 8. A brief letter to Aaron. I love you. I need you. I would give my life for you. I would do almost anything to make you happy. But I find, as the days drag by and I see you with the others, that there is but one thing that I will never do for you, my sweet. I find that I am quite unwilling to stay here as long as another owns your heart and lives in your mind. If my words to you now make you unhappy, I apologize, but 'tis a truth I've come to realize, and I would rather leave you altogether than stay and share your heart with another. I wish I did not feel this way, that I could do as the others are and just be happy with having you at all. But I cannot bring myself to share you as they do. Till next we meet, Alistair Larroe. It had been a stressful 2 days for us all since I brought Erin into my home to save her life, and I felt a faint glow of satisfaction as I stood looking at her. She had been nearly lifeless and cold to the touch when I arrived home with her in my arms and covered in her blood. If not for young Nova donating blood to her and Merrick's near-blind devotion to her care, she would have died that night. I could have lost her through my own carelessness, and the thought of that both pained and shamed me greatly to the very core of my being. Perhaps, when she was recovered, I could take her to Fantasy and we could spend a night talking or just dancing. All I truly wanted was to spend time alone with her, to get to know her, and perhaps earn her heart. Now that I could see her with the lost ones she guarded so zealously, however, I could tell that they were one of the true reasons behind Erin's refusal to give in to the moment of just a few nights ago and just see where we could have gone from there. These children meant more to this woman than nearly anything else on this planet, and in a way Erin's devotion to them reminded me of a female friend that I had loved deeply long ago. Maybe even her life, I mused, remembering what Delia had done repeatedly for her children, and wished that her memory would fade as so many others had over the years. I had been watching this strong young woman laying in my guest bed for 13 years, and I had grown to love her a great deal in that time. More, I thought, than I had loved Delia. I had watched and come to love this complicated, confusing, contradictory, and frustrating woman over the years, and yet there was so much about this woman that I loved that I didn't know, that I greatly wanted to know. What was her favorite color? Did she like chocolate? Where did she learn to dance? What music truly got her blood rushing through her? If she would just give me a chance, none, half a chance, to really know her, I would take care of her. I would treat her the way a strong woman should be treated, with respect and deference. I would love her the way she needed to be loved if given the opportunity. Hells, I would love her the way I needed to love her, carefully, thoroughly, deeply, and completely. For hours, none, days, it would take me days, maybe years, to love her the way I wanted to love her, I thought, and looked at her demon as he moved back to the bed and put his hand on her shoulder. I watched Aaron smile at him and felt a stab of jealousy, followed quickly by shame and remorse. He was there for her when she needed him nearly 3 months ago, and I was not. I had been too far away to assist the hunters when they were in danger from the walker, and I had been intercepted by one of my flock who had then tried to kill me when they again found themselves in mortal danger. I had given strict orders that the hunters were to be left alone, and unfortunately several of my people went against them and set a hound on them. This dark being that humans believed to be the embodiment of evil was the rescuer of my heart, and I couldn't bring myself to hate him for that. Oh, I disliked him greatly, and had done so for centuries. I frequently wished that she was not so close to him emotionally, but I did not hate him. His mark on her was one of the only reasons Aaron Malone was still among the living. This demon she called friend, that I had inadvertently sent to her years ago, was the only reason she was alive now, and the funny thing was, neither of them knew it. The mark could be sensed by any of the other kin, day-kin or night-kin. We could all sense it, and knew it for the binding mark that it was. A deal had been struck between them at some point in the last few years, and until it was completed, they belonged to each other. Isaac and Aaron were each other's property, whether they wished to believe so or not. Demon-kissed, the day-kin called it, and viewed it as a form of curse. Kin-bound, night-kin called it, and viewed it as a family tie of sorts, though in truth it was just a magical mark left on a person that the demon had claimed as a partner, family, or, as in their case, a friend. Isaac looked to be in his 20s like Aaron, but he was, in fact, thousands of years older than she, and still very young to be on his own. His scent told me that he was half human and a part of my psychotic assortment of family, both of which I had known for centuries now. I found their friendship a little odd, and had found it so ever since they met 10 years ago. I had been about to approach a young Aaron, who had somehow gotten on the wrong side of a pack of dog-shifters, when the demon had run around a corner and stopped in front of her. He had told her that he had seen that she was going to be in trouble on this street, and that he was there to help her back to her team safely. At first I had assumed that the young demon was just trying to help her, and had followed them to make sure that the little huntress actually returned to her team, instead of dying in the gutter somewhere in this city of death and misery. But as I followed them and listened to them talk, I found to my amusement that the demon was still just as inexperienced as the huntress he was helping, despite the centuries that I had known him. I knew his name and learned her name. I witnessed him protect the young woman he had promised to take to her team. I watched as they fought, or ran, or hid from the dogs, and I watched as they indeed returned to the hunter's base without being hurt, more than just a few bruises and scratches. Over the intervening years I had spent more time watching them than watching my own people, and as a result the team of hunters that had fascinated me the most had been annihilated in a single night a little over 2 months ago. I still blamed myself for what had happened that night, and I had been investigating the matter relentlessly. Despite what Aaron may think, I never intended more than to spend time in her company 4 nights ago, and again 3 nights ago I had only wanted to find out why she had spent a good part of the day in my territory. Instead of doing either, I had helped her save a wolf pack that I had taken in, and ended up injuring her severely in the process. "Did you say something, Alistair?" Aaron asked, and I looked up from the floor to her beautiful face. "None, I did not," I said, and her dark green-blue eyes grew wide with surprise, and her mouth fell open. "You're French?" she asked after a moment of just staring at me as though I had grown a second head out of my stomach. "I am from every place and no place. I am a vampire. We don't really have a nation we call our own," I said, and turned toward the door, intending to leave before she asked anything I would truly have to lie to her about. However, I was stopped short of my goal by the blasted 6-foot 7-inch tall Dion she-male that was leaning in the doorway and grinning like a fool. "You led about there, my friend. How about you tell her what you were before you were turned?" he said, and smiled around me at Aaron. Theoretically, I could just rip the Fae's golden-haired head off his shoulders and shove it up his ass, and he would still be alive. I relished the thought for a moment, then banished it. There were children present, and I truly did not want Aaron to think me more of a monster than she already did. The way Merrick met my gaze without flinching made me believe that he would probably enjoy making me look like an ass, and relish the fight that would result from such an attempted action on my part. "Pray tell, does fair Lady Aaron know what you are, my friend?" I asked him on a breath of sound, and watched his amber-gold eyes flicker and darken, then his gaze fell to the floor, and I had my answer. Aaron still had no idea what this man was or what he was capable of magically, even after spending 11 years in his company and care. Alistair? What does Merrick mean, what you were before you were turned? Aaron asked, and I briefly closed my eyes before I turned around to face her once more. What he means, my dear, is that I did have a nation I once called my own. All of the Shadowkin did at one time, before they were turned. For some of us, that time was so long ago that we have forgotten it. For others, we remember what it was like to be human and have a nationality to call our own, to have a family of blood relatives that we could call on and whom we loved dearly. I said, dredging up the Scottish brogue I had acquired 1,850 years ago while living in Scotland. A shadow crossed her pretty face, and she frowned. Her green-blue eyes darkened and began to glitter wetly. I had not meant for my answer to upset her, but I had answered her truthfully, and I had no way to recall my words and try to tell her the answer in a different way. "You mean you don't remember?" she asked in a near whisper. I could not bring myself to outright lie to this woman, but I could play word games with her. I could tell her the truth and never answer the true question she was asking. I remember much of my life before I became what I am now. A little has faded, however, over the centuries. I answered her and shrugged. By using the way she always answered me, I was being completely honest with her, but in a way that would keep as much about myself secret from her as she kept hidden from me. I knew that eventually I would have to be entirely honest with her, but it would not be tonight. I told her a truth about myself, but not the whole truth. That would come later, when she had regained her strength. For now, Aaron needed rest and time to heal, not a discussion that would only tax her nerves and raise her already taxed blood pressure. You need your rest, Malone, and I need to rest as well after our little encounter with the walker 2 days ago. I used more power than I initially thought I had in getting you here in time to save your life, I said quietly so as not to wake the children who had fallen asleep as we were talking. I bid you all good night, I said, when she opened her mouth to speak. Turning again, I left the room by transforming into mist and moving like a dark wind past the Fae in the doorway. I returned to my physical form when I reached the top of the stairs leading from this wing of my home to the ground floor. I imagined that Erin would be far from pleased when she found out that she was in my home and sleeping in a room I had designed with her in mind. I had claimed this beautiful 18th century four-story mansion 10 years ago when I took over the east side of Old City as my territory. I had taken over this territory so that I could watch the humans that I had sent to save a young girl from a fate that no one that young should ever have thrust upon them. I had already saved her mother and brother before they died, but in order to save them I had to give them some of my blood, and I had been weakened from it. I hadn't turned them, but I had changed them a little, and they had needed time to adjust to the changes. I had wanted to save the girl myself, but I was in no condition to confront 8 other vampires that I sensed were lower rank masters. My own power rank being 9, I could have easily gotten in and out with the girl without their even noticing that she was gone, had I been at full strength that night. I did the next best thing I could think of at the time. I found intelligent, capable human adults and told them that the girl was the captive of vampires and that she needed their help. The oldest male had been a police captain, if I remembered correctly, and had asked me why one bloodsucker would sell out another. I had told him that they were breaking our laws, and I was weakened from saving the girl's mother and sibling. I had told him that I couldn't deal with them on my own at the moment, and needed help saving the girl from them. The man had asked so many more questions after that it gave me a headache just to remember them. Banishing the memories, I continued down the stairs to the grand foyer. I paused for a moment and contacted my nearly human lieutenant telepathically. "Graham, how is our house cleaning going?" I sent. "It is going well, master. Jane and I have dispatched another 12 malcontents," he answered promptly. "And the others, I can feel their disquiet," I said. "They seem to be taking the cleansing of our ranks with caution, my lord," was the reply. "Caution is preferable to outright rebellion, though I would rather they were happy," I stated. "Understood. I will endeavor to make them happy in future," he said. "I do not require that you make it so. I just want to be informed if anything major occurs," I told him, and could feel him thinking before he responded. "As you wish, my lord. We have found the identity of the originator of the insurrection, as you had instructed. We have not found her yet, though." "Ah, so the instigator for this mess was female. I should have known, though. Women were trouble, no matter what their breed or status among their people." "Who, I may know where she has run to," I said, rather than just taking the information from his mind, as other masters might have. My reluctance to invade the minds of my people may very well be the reason I now found myself having to execute so many of them, but I refused to trespass into that last bastion of privacy. I could control so much about my people, from their actions to the thoughts in their minds to the way they interacted with other beings. I could control them completely if I wished. I could turn all of my people into puppets and avoid things like this current mess entirely. However, over the centuries I have learned that one may avoid rebellion in this manner, but your people were never truly happy or content if you controlled every aspect of their lives. People, all people, were much happier when they were left to make mistakes and live and think the way they wished to. I was much happier when I just let them be as they wished. "Master, you need not tire yourself looking for the traitor. We shall locate the wench and bring her before you for punishment, as is our place," Graham replied after several moments of mental silence. "Her name, Graham, what is it?" I said, placing more power into my mental voice. "My lover, my lord. It was Sarah who betrayed us all," he said, his reluctance clear in his mind. "Return to the mansion, my friend, so that we may speak of this further. Your mother your mother worries that you have been gone for too long," I told him after a few moments of thought, and making the decision to fetch him myself if he refused. I did not get the sense that he would refuse, though. I suspected that he would give me grief, perhaps bicker, bitch, and act like a snot, but he would not refuse. "Is that an order, Alistair, or just a friendly suggestion?" The lack of respect in the man's tone would have gotten him killed had I been a different, more violent kind of master vampire. "It is a friendly suggestion of an order. You need not see your family if you would rather not. You will have to return home, however. I need to speak with you about this in person. I do not like that the oldest of my flock turned on me, nor do I like the thought of you hunting her on your own. Should anything happen to you, I would be left to deal with your mother's grief and rage. I rather like the life I have at this moment. Should you die, your mother would make sure I followed you in short order," I stated, and detected a bit of amusement from him. The amusement at my expense was something that I'd had to get used to from the young man I had saved 13 years ago. Indeed, both humans found me amusing in the oddest ways, and I in turn derived endless hours of entertainment from them. "The fact that you fear my mother never ceases to amuse me, my lord," he replied. "The fact that you do not fear her, my friend, never ceases to amaze me," I said, and turned toward my office, located in what had once been a parlor just off the foyer. Don't fear for your life so much, boss. My mother loves you so much for saving us that she'd be more likely to kill me for causing you grief, he said, and I sensed that he was moving closer to the mansion. Nonsense. She loves you more than I. Be vigilant as you make your way home, Lieutenant. The wolves are a little nervous and may mistake you for an enemy, I said, and felt his curiosity. Should I take the subway? The rats never pay me any mind when I'm down there, Graham said. I thought for a moment. The were-rats that lived in the subway were less likely to attack than the wolves were at the moment, but they were untrustworthy and tricky as hell to deal with. No, it was better that he return the way he was at the moment. Laurent and Markov would ensure that he was left alone by the others and returned in one piece. None. McLeod is here in the mansion. His pack won't risk his safety or their own at this time, I said at last, and sat in the chair behind my desk. All right, boss. I should arrive home in an hour, maybe less if I don't run into trouble, he said, and broke contact with me. I leaned back in my chair, closed my eyes, and pinched the bridge of my nose a bit as I contemplated my new guests. The younger children would be no trouble to keep busy. There was much in the house for them to explore and play with. The older children could be occupied with small tasks around the house and schooling. Their mother and her demonic companion were another matter altogether, and could prove more trouble than I would wish to deal with at the moment. A knock on the open door drew me from my thoughts, and I looked up from the surface of the desk to see Moira McGrady standing there. The difference in the surname of mother and daughter was a bit of a puzzle to me, as Moira assured me that her last name was the same as her late husband's. "Moira, my dear, what can I do for you this evening?" I asked, and waved for her to enter. "My daughter is in the house," she whispered, her voice trailing off as she came to stand before the desk with her hands twisted in her skirt. Her dark brown eyes were wet with tears, and she seemed to be having trouble getting a full breath. "Moira, love, come here," I said, pushing the chair back from the desk a bit and holding a hand out to her. Taller than her daughter in height, slight of form, and beautifully delicate in appearance, Moira was a powerful feminine force to be reckoned with on a good day. But tonight she was just a mother who had been without one of her young for far too long, and in need of a bit of comfort. I leaned back in my seat and opened my arms as she rounded the desk. Pulling her gently down onto my lap, I wrapped my arms around her and held her quietly for a moment. "Come now, there is no need for these tears you shed. Your daughter is here, breathing and in one piece. I have no doubt that she will be quite distressed to learn where she is, and very vocal about it," I said, and tried to remember if I had hidden all of Aaron's weapons properly. "I know, it's just I have missed my baby so much, and she's just up the stairs now," she whispered in a choked voice and rested her head on my right shoulder. I began rubbing Moira's back and humming a soft melody. After a few moments she lifted her head and gave me a watery smile, then leaned in and kissed my cheek. "You're a good man, Alistair Leroux. You are kind, gentle, and caring. You are strong in both your heart and your mind, and above all, you love my girl with all your heart and soul. I'm glad you saved us, and that you took us in for all these years. I hope my daughter is told of what you did that night, and that she learns why you did it," she said softly as she stood from my lap. I caught her hands and placed a kiss on the back of each, then stood as well. "I would have saved you all, had I but known your family was in my neighborhood and in danger. I could have saved your husband, and perhaps then you would not feel so alone when your son is away and I am busy elsewhere in the city," I said with regret. Moira laughed a little, and then drew me into a small hug before she stepped back and shook her head. "You're not Superman, and you're not truly able to be aware of everything at once. But you have saved so many, and you save more every night. You take us in and keep us safe. None of us could ask for more of you than you have already given. Why would we, when you have done everything you can for us? I say again, you're a good man, Alistair," she said, then turned and quietly left the room. If only she knew the way I used to be, I thought, shaking my head. Walking over to the left-hand bookshelf, I pressed a rose-shaped button, and the front half of the top shelf retracted into the ceiling, revealing an inner shelf upon which rested an old record player and a box of vinyl records. I gently removed the player and box. Moving back to my desk, I placed both on it. I then moved across the room to retrieve an antique tea trolley. Rolling the trolley back to my desk, I placed it near the wall behind my chair, and then placed the record player on it. The box of records I placed on the trolley's shelf. I would return everything to its rightful and hidden place before I retired for the day. Music was one of two things I could truly enjoy, no matter the century or what country I happened to be in at the time. Books were the other. Music was one of the things that gave me comfort in my extremely long life, and I feared that one day humans, and the other musically inclined beings in this world, would stop writing songs, and until 13 years ago I had feared that books, much like kings and knights, would become a thing of the past as well. Bending down, I carefully sorted through the records and selected one by a group that I had favored in 1970, called Roxette. I placed the record on the turntop and set the needle. When nothing happened, I remembered that I needed to plug it in. Doing so, I heard the first strains of Listen to Your Heart and turned around to return to my chair. Glimpsing something in the doorway, I instinctively used my mind to freeze it and fully focused my gaze on the doorway. "You young ones could have gotten yourselves hurt, hiding your presence from me like that," I said mildly to the 4 children I had frozen in the open door. Their sense told me that 1 was a fox shifter, 2 were werebears, and the last was a leopard or jaguar shifter. Raising one brow, I asked the young fox boy, "Why are you not in bed?" and released my hold enough to let him talk. "Let me go, fangy pervert," the boy squawked. I was so stunned by what he said that I released my hold on the children. Recovering immediately, I caught them all again and drew them into the room, closing the door behind them. "Who taught you that phrase?" I demanded as I released them again in front of me. "And do not lie to me. I know your mother well enough to know what she would tell you to do in this situation," I added as the little fox opened his mouth to speak. "Mama," the little dark-haired leopard girl said. "Is that what she calls me, Kitten?" I asked her, feeling my heart break a little as she nodded her little dark red-haired head. "Thank you, Kitten. I'm glad you told me," I said, and gave her a small smile. She gave a shy smile back, then sniffed the air around her and moved toward me. "Joni, come back," the young fox whined and tried to catch her hand. "He smells like Michelangelo," she whispered in awe and pressed her nose against my knee. "Michelangelo smells like Michelangelo, Joni," the fox said, poking out his bottom lip and crossing his thin arms over his chest. Reaching down, I lifted the girl into my arms and caught the bears with my mind again as they tried to slip past me to my record player and turned them upside down. "What is your name, Kitten?" I asked her, and tickled her tummy, making her giggle. "Her name Joni," the fox snapped and put his hands on his hips. "Was I speaking to you, young Master Fox?" I asked, raising one brow at him. He shook his head. "Aye, Joan," the little girl said, then pointed at the fox. "Him Derek, and that Barnaby, and that Bailey," she added, pointing at the bear cubs. "And how old are you, Miss Joan?" I asked, suppressing a laugh. Her cute little face scrunched up as she thought, then she grinned and held up 2 fingers, crowing, "This many." "Barnaby, Bailey, Derek, Joan, where are you?" a voice called from the hall before I could ask the other children their ages, and the young fox, Derek, let out a high-pitched yip. A moment later the door swung open, and a tall, thin, black-haired boy entered the room. "There you are! I've been looking for you lot everywhere!" he exclaimed, then focused his dark amber eyes on me and frowned fiercely. "There is a lot of everywhere in my home, my boy," I said dryly, and returned to my chair, holding little Joan carefully on my knee once I was seated.